Hello everyone, I'm Colin Kinnett. Today I got a bunch of really useful tips sent in by subscribers just like you who keep sending me this neat stuff. Anyway, before we get started today, I want to remind you, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I invite you to do that. Hit the subscribe and the little bell, and let's get on with the first tip today. This tip comes from Bill, and Bill buys his two-part epoxy glues in tubes like this, and you know that when you take the lid off these, often the glue can just run out, so you got to keep making sure that you put the lid back on. What Bill does with his, he's made a little stand, just a little slot. I made this on my table saw. Of course, Bill's has two slots because epoxy is two parts, A and B, but the same thing, it works great for holding things up like this. Now, where we got into the conversation with Bill is I mentioned that the only form that I can buy them in is these tubes, but I made a little stand that I can have them upside down, and this works very well too. The glue is always at the bottom. I've never had a leak, and it's always quick and ready to go. So there's a couple of options for you. And you'll notice that I put shoe glue in here. I've actually used this. I use this around the workshop. It's amazing areas that sort of any other glue doesn't work. And there's other brands that are very similar to this. But there's some another form of tip right there that are different kinds of glues that you might be able to use in your shop. This tip comes from Jack. And Jack says that if you use these little oikos, whatever they are, yogurt tubs, for if you put, for example, Minwax wipe on poly or other polyurethane products or water-based paints, the paints don't stick to them. Just have a Varathane, basically an identical, just a different brand name, very identical to a polyurethane wipe on poly. And you can see when it comes out of here, I let that sit for a few days, and it does not stick to the sides of it. But you'll notice also that when I start moving things around here, and my caution for you is, if you are reusing these, you need to be very careful, because if you have not cleaned this out, and usually what I would do is clean this out with a paper towel after I used it and get all of that off there if I was going to reuse this, because if you don't clean these out, this stuff that sticks to the side can come off and get into your mixture when the next time you're using this product. So, and I know that because it's happened to me. I've learned this stuff the hard way. So if you are reusing these and you haven't cleaned these out, you want to make very, very sure that you've cleaned all of this stuff out of here. And it will come off, but you have to work hard to get that off. So just a quick tip on that. But thanks, Jack. You're right that this the materials do not stick to this. But if you've left it in there, they dry on there, and they are a little bit hard to get off. So watch when you use any of these kinds of reusable products. This next tip comes from Roland, and Roland took old Lazy Susan that he had from his dining area, brought it into a shop, and he's using it now as a place where you can, of course, finish your projects just by spinning them around. And this idea has been around for a long time. In fact, if you don't have an old Lazy Susan, you can purchase something called a VersaSpin, and they're very inexpensive. I did a review of these in 2012, so a long time ago. But you don't even have to go to this. You know, you can get your own. I bought these at a garage sale. Look there's all sorts of different sizes, and these are mechanisms. These are turntables that you can make your own. Very simple to make your own, whatever size you want, and just put that together in your workshop. And to add to this, here's an idea from Michael from Vancouver, who suggests using what he calls mending plates. And you've seen these in the big box stores where it's a plate like this, but they have little tabs that stick up, typically used for joinery, rafters, and so on. And I like these because they're heavy. I'll put a picture. This is what a mending plate looks like. And you could use those and I like them because they're heavy. They're not going to move around on you. You could use them on a Lazy Susan mechanism, or you could use them standalone. So some really good ideas from both of you. Thanks, Roland and Michael. This tip comes from Scott, and for those of you who follow me, you know that I use a little 23 gauge pinner. I use it quite a bit, and the pins for these are very small, and of course there's all sorts of different sizes, and I don't have good storage for them. I have the little cases that they come in, and I put them in this other, I don't even know where that came from. Scott suggests buying a plano, and if you're not familiar with the name, hunting, camping, fishing stores will have something like that. They make cases for all sorts of different things, and in Scott's case, he found one that he can put all of his pins in. Now, the first thing I thought of when he suggested plano was they're typically kind of expensive. And then I got thinking about it, and I thought, you know, I've got a fair bit of money invested in all of these pins. All I need to do is have one mishap and dump these on the floor, and a lot of them are going to break. They're going to get dirty, which starts gumming up your pinner. And you know, at the end of the day, for a cost of a little bit more for good storage of your pins is probably an excellent idea. So I'm going to take that and do that, Scott. I think that's a really good idea. So when I find the case that I want, I'll show all of you. So thanks for that, Scott. This tip comes from Harley, and this is a tip that I've been using for a long time, but I don't think I've ever talked about it on a video. But what Harley says is if you're using a CA glue like Star Bond, this is a cyanoacrylate, this is like a super glue, when you use a little bit of it on your project, I'm just going to put a drop of it on there. When you turn it back up, give the bottle a little squeeze, and you might see a little bit of glue come out the end. No, it didn't in this case, but sometimes it does. Then you just take that and wipe that off. I wipe it off with a cloth or paper towel, and when you put the cap back on, you never have to fight taking these caps off, and you never have to worry about a clogged cap there. So just a quick tip on that. And those of you who follow my channel, I will already know, if you're new to my channel, I date every bottle that I get in so that I know how old it is. And these will typically last at least 18 months if you store them in the refrigerator. And that's normally what I do. But I still like to know exactly what the date is so that I keep up to date on that. So that was a good tip, Harley. I use this stuff all the time, as you know. And that's a good tip for clearing that nozzle. This first tip is sent in by Bill, and Bill says if you're working with glues and little paint brushes, he said you can wrap the paint brushes while they still have glue on them, wrap them in very wet cloth, and they will last for up to 2 or 3 days. Now, when I'm using small brushes, these are little acid brushes, and sometimes I cut them down. You can see that this one is quite a bit shorter, and sometimes I cut them down for gluing. And I even do that with larger brushes. I'll actually cut them down and use them depending on the project that I'm doing. But Bill says if you wrap things up for a day or two overnight, it preserves the brush. And I actually did this. In fact, I forgot about these, and they've been sitting for, I think, 3 or 4 days. But look at this. I just unwrapped them this morning, and look at that. They're nice and pliable yet. Now, when I wrapped it up, it was quite wet. It wasn't dripping wet, but it was close to it. And this is the same on this one. And if you look on here, you'll see a 1 and a 2. So I actually use Titebond Original, which has a very short open time. It dries very quickly. But I also tried Titebond 2, which has quite a bit longer open time. And both of them worked well. So I've actually tested this, and I have to say I'm very impressed. So from now on, I won't have to rush and clean up my brush. I'll just make sure that I've got a nice wet cloth. I can wrap it up and I can clean it later on, or it'll even keep for a day or two wrapped up in that cloth. So that was a great tip, Bill. Thanks. Well, that concludes my video for today. All sorts of great ideas. I want to thank everybody for sending in all these great ideas and sharing them with us, because we all get to learn something from them, even me. And for those of you who may not have seen the video, I did a video on making a Lazy Susan platter, and we actually still use that in our living room. It works well. It's a centerpiece for all sorts of things. That video will show up here. You can go and have a look at that, and maybe that's something you want to do. Maybe you want to order a couple of them, one for a project for your main living room and another one for a painting turntable for your workshop. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.